When billionaire widower Ethan Cole finally hired the fifth nanny in 6 months, he was running on nothing but coffee, deadlines, and a desperation he refused to admit. His 5-year-old twins, Ava and Austin, hadn't eaten a full meal since their mother's funeral 9 months ago. Every plate of food placed in front of them at their sprawling Connecticut mansion was met with silence, turned faces, and the same haunting words. "Mommy used to cook this. We don't want it anymore." The nannies all quit eventually, muttering about how unmanageable the kids were, how cold Ethan was, and how empty the house felt. And so it was a rainy Wednesday morning when Grace Whitfield arrived at his door. She wasn't what he expected. She wasn't the polished, pale, perfect nanny he'd hired before. She was a 36-year-old black woman with warm eyes, a thick New Orleans accent, and a resume full of childcare experience for families far less wealthy. She wore a simple navy dress and carried a worn tote bag that looked almost as tired as she did. But something about her, calm, steady, unflinching, made him say yes. The first thing she did was nothing. Ethan watched from his home office as Grace sat on the kitchen floor, cross-legged, her own plate of chicken nuggets and green beans in front of her. The twins stared from across the table, their own plates untouched as usual. Grace didn't push. She didn't plead. She just smiled at them, picked up a nugget, and took a big, exaggerated bite. She hummed. "Your mama sure taught y'all what good food oughta look like. Can't say no to these nuggets now." For the first time in months, Ava's lips twitched into something close to a smile. Austin eyed her suspiciously, but his little hand crept toward his plate. By the end of lunch, both children had cleared their plates. Ethan, standing in the doorway, didn't know whether to weep or cheer. Over the weeks that followed, Grace worked quiet miracles. She didn't just feed the children. She saw them. She let Ava braid her hair on the porch, even when her hands fumbled. She let Austin help her bake cookies, even when flour dusted the marble counters and the mansion's kitchen staff looked on in horror. She filled the house with laughter, and stories, and music, a jazz tune here, a lullaby there. And she didn't just see the children. She saw him. The broken man pretending to be whole. The husband who couldn't bring himself to sleep in his own bed because his wife's scent still lingered. The father who spent too many hours at the office because the house felt like a graveyard. Late one night, when he came home past midnight, he found her sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of tea, waiting up for him. "You look tired, Mr. Cole," she said gently. He sat across from her, laid his head in his hands, and for the first time since the funeral, let himself cry. It was at the children's school recital that he realized just how much Grace had changed them. On stage, Ava stood tall and confident, singing a solo. Austin waved proudly at the crowd. But it wasn't until Ava spotted Grace in the audience, wearing her Sunday best, hands clasped, eyes shining, that she lit up like the sun. When the show ended, both children ran right past Ethan, and straight into Grace's arms. That night, as he tucked them into bed, Ava whispered, "Daddy, are you gonna marry Miss Grace? So she can be our mommy?" Ethan froze. He hadn't even let himself think it. But over the next few days, he began to notice all the little things, how the children's giggles always seemed to follow her, how his morning coffee always tasted better when she made it, how her scent, a warm mix of vanilla and lavender, lingered in the air long after she left the room. And he realized Ava was right. Grace wasn't just someone who worked in his home. She was home. On Christmas morning, Ethan knelt in front of her by the tree, his heart hammering like a drum. The twins watched from the couch, bouncing with excitement. "Grace Whitfield," he began, his voice breaking, "you came into this house and gave us back more than we even knew we'd lost. You fed our stomachs, our hearts, and our souls. Will you marry me?" Grace's hands flew to her mouth. Tears sparkled in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered, as the twins threw themselves into her arms, cheering. That spring, they married in the garden behind the mansion. The flowers were in bloom, the jazz band played softly, and the children danced barefoot in the grass. Ethan and Grace stood hand in hand, a family reborn not out of wealth or perfection, but out of kindness, patience, and the quiet power of love that asks for nothing in return. As the sun set behind them, Ethan leaned close and murmured, "You saved us, Grace. All three of us." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "No, Mr. Cole," she said softly. "We saved each other. Love isn't found in perfection, or in the things money can buy. It's found in selfless acts of care, in showing up when others have walked away, and in healing hearts that thought they'd never feel whole again. Sometimes, the family you need is waiting where you least expect."